And we are live. Hey, folks, welcome back to Philadelphia Stage Combat Workshop live stream. We are talking with Torre Edahl today. Torre is a physical trainer and has her own company, Athletes on Stage, which we are going to be hearing so much more about. I can't wait to hear about. We are talking about training for stage combat, lots of performance conditioning kind of things. Before we get started on that, I just want to make sure we throw out the usual. Make sure you go to this website and register as a student. All right, register as a student with the Philadelphia Stage Combat Workshop. If you have any questions in regards to the workshop, to stage combat, to physical training, because Torre does check this email as well. You can also send an email to this. Okay. Let's see. And last but not least, the hashtag that we're trying to see if we can get it going, please, people, because this is kind of awesome. The social distance showdown kind of started October. We're closing out October. October's a freaking stage combat sandwich, and it's going to be awesome, especially with candy and stage combat on Halloween night. Why not? Exactly. Which is a hilarious thing to talk about when we're talking about health and fitness and conditioning. The irony does not escape me. So cool. Hey, Torre, how you doing?
Hey, Terry, I am fantastic. I am super happy to be live with you talking about strength and conditioning and fitness and how that all wraps up into your lives as performers and particularly as stage combat practitioners and physical performers.
Adding one more banner before we get into the nitty gritty. And you'll laugh when you see what this one is.
Oh, no. Yes, congratulations, Lubke. Lubke just got his fight director status, which is awesome. Lubke was also my first stage combat instructor all of a year and a half ago. This is kind of the most recent movement practice that I've added to my own performance life. My background is primarily as a dancer, and then I found sort of physical theater and devised theater and clowning and all of that world, and then a lot of powerlifting and fitness world kind of stuff, and then from the sort of combination of all of that into stage combat, which I started over in Minnesota about a year and a half ago, and then moved out to Philly and have been training with Terry and Oliver and all the wonderful people out here since then.
Yay. And we are so happy to have you out here. Minnesota folks, we're sorry, we're claiming her, just saying. So from a performer standpoint, I've been asking this question a lot to some of the other folks that have been on these conversations. Last but not least, before we get into the questions, if anyone who is viewing, because I see we've got at least 3 people viewing with us, throw a hi, let us know that you're checking us out in the comment section. We'd love to say hi and hear from you. If you have any questions for the workshop, for me, for Torre, for physical training, I swear I know the difference between my left and my right. My camera's just flipped. Throw it in the comment section. We can actually answer these questions live. So we want to hear from folks if you're out there. So into the questions. So from a performer standpoint, we've been talking to a lot of folks about why stage combat training is important for performers. And you kind of have a very interesting perspective on that, having come from very heavy dance and powerlifting and clowning and like other forms of movement, and you've kind of gotten sucked into stage combat. Why do you feel like this training is, in addition to a lot of the other movement forms, why do you feel like stage combat training is really important?
Yeah, a lot of different reasons. First and foremost, because everybody feels more badass with a sword in their hand. And I say that a little dismissively, but I think it's actually really, really true, particularly for people, particularly for femme folks who have been in dance and in the performing arts for a really, really long time and have spent a lot of their careers being told to be like daintier or lighter or prettier or whatever it is to like get to go and be in a space where that's not really a word that you hear is really relaxing and really relieving, like just a nice change. So I say everyone feels more badass with the sword in their hand, like kind of as a one-off, but it's also actually really true. And I think that it does something, and being in this space and being in this community provides a way to perform in different ways for folks who may not have that or may not be asked to do those things in other performance types. But beyond that, one of the things that I adore so much about stage combat is the specificity of the work. That the specificity, excuse me, of the movements itself, right? When we talk about point work or whatever that is,
Yeah.
but also the specificity of the intention behind performing stage combat, right? Like you need to know where you are intending, where your character is intending to hit, why they are intending to do that movement, that cut in that time frame, what their thought process is, and you need to be able to physically convey that all very, very quickly, but also very clearly for an audience member. So I think it's something that has a lot of uh, transfer to a lot of other both theater and movement practices that it's just a different way to train that kind of specificity that you don't necessarily get in all other art forms.
Nice. Very cool. So hey, our viewers have jumped. So hey, if you're tuning in, say hi in the comments. All right. Anyways, back to the questions. So from a let's see where I want to go. Yeah, let's just jump into this question. So like
Right.
stage combat training, I think for a lot of folks, and I don't know if you've seen a similar kind of thing, it can be kind of intimidating for folks that are new to any sort of theatrical movement. There's a lot of folks who think that you have to have a certain kind of physique or a certain kind of stamina or a certain kind of physical condition to even start doing this stuff. So what can you say to the folks who are hesitant to sign up for a class or a workshop or anything like that because they might feel out of shape?
Yeah. So first and foremost, right, characters come in all shapes and sizes and physical conditions and physical forms. So the idea that you have to be any one particular like aesthetic to perform stage combat is some hot garbage, because the characters that you're playing aren't, right, they're not all one type of physique, and if they are, you should be working with different theaters and different directors and in different shows that don't have that kind of like patriarchal beauty standard attached to who they cast and what types of characters they work with, right? So that's part one. But part two is also that you're not going to get any more into your body. You're not going to get any more in shape, whatever that means to you, by not doing the thing. So you don't have to be in fantastic shape to start any kind of physical training, right? And in fact, having that as a motivation, if you come into stage combat and you happen to fall in love with it, or you start a dance class and you happen to fall in love with that form, it's a lot more satisfying to start training to get better at this particular activity than it is to just train because it's something that you feel like you should do, or that you want to look a certain way or meet a certain level of conditioning. So really that external motivation, that like, oh yeah, you know what, I really want to get really, really good at stage combat, so I know that I need to improve my conditioning because I found that towards the end of class I may be a little bit out of breath, is a different type of motivation than I need to improve my conditioning because the internet tells me I should. Um, but also genuinely, like, it's any kind of starting point is awesome. And coming into a class, you'll learn really, really quickly, and you'll engage in your body really, really quickly and find a way to connect with your body that you may not have had before. And that's awesome. And that's a beautiful starting point for anyone, whether you've worked in movement before or not, whether being in your body is something that's comfortable for you or not.
Very cool.
Yeah. And I think there are kind of maybe two versions of that question, right? Like
Right.
people who are hesitant to sign up for class because they feel out of shape because it's something that they've never done before and it's
Hmm.
new to them versus people who are hesitant to sign up for a class because they feel out of shape because we've just been in quarantine for 7 months.
True.
And you may have been in rehearsals 20 hours a week and at the gym a few hours a week and in training a few hours a week back in March or April, but we've been stuck in our apartments since then. And to which I say genuinely, like, you're not going to get back into shape without doing something.
Right.
Just join, just do it, just find that way to come back to your art form and come back to your practice because the longer you're away from it, the harder it's going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Um, I just want to throw a quick question out to the folks who are tuning in live. Looks like we got a couple of people on a couple of different places. Um, if you could throw in the comment section whether or not you're having good connection. I am trying to throw something in the comment section myself. I just want to make sure that the live stream actually is going out okay. So if you're watching us, please throw a comment in the comment section, giving us a thumbs up whether or not things are okay. Otherwise, let's keep talking. Cool. So what can we do? Like we all really have been stuck in quarantine, and there's certain things that folks can do to get themselves ready for at least even just a little bit of movement for a workshop.
Mhm.
So what are some things you can recommend for folks to get ready to be moving for a workshop?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the two things that you need primarily when you're coming into a workshop is kind of a strong and mobile base and a sense of how you're moving your body. And so, particularly since we've been in quarantine and we're all virtual beings now and we're just hunched over our computers like this, one of the major things that's done to all of us, whether or not this was true before quarantine, is that we are all now in this kind of kyphosis posture where we're rounded forward, where our pecs are really tight, where we're not really engaging our back much. And so, before coming into a workshop, before coming into any kind of big movement practice, that's one of the things that you're going to want to address within yourself. And so that's going to come down to shoulder mobility, as well as back strength and the tightness in our pectoral muscles from hunching over like this all day. And those are really, really easy things to address, right? Like grabbing a tennis ball or a lacrosse ball and just doing some self myofascial release right underneath the collarbone where the pectoral muscle begins. You can use your hand or you can bump up against a wall and kind of roll your chest and your pecs over that. And that'll open that up. And just doing that for a couple of minutes in the evening before you go to bed between now and 10 days from now when the Philly Stage Combat Workshop begins, right, you're going to see a huge difference in how your posture opens up. The other major thing would be wrist strength and shoulder strength and mobility, particularly when we're talking about any kind of weapons work. Um, I have a very old TheraBand here. If you were ever a dancer and did a lot of point work, this is from back in those days for a lot of that like foot and arch work. But I know there are also a lot of pretty bands out there if you want to spend a little more money on one. This was like $10 a decade ago. But just having it and giving yourself the ability to go back and forth and practice that shoulder mobility. I'm getting stuck on a chair behind me, but that kind of work in opening up the shoulders there, as well as just going through wrist circles with or without a weight. I love to put my hand up on like a yoga block, and this is just a little 6 pound weight. It's actually a filler for a weighted vest that I have, but engaging in wrist curls in both directions there, as well as sort of in all four, because we need that full strength and mobility in our wrists, in our shoulders to come in and do any kind of weapons work with any kind of precision without creating injuries, because we haven't been doing that kind of work in quite a while. So if you're not going to address anything else, I would say to address your posture, hunching forward to open that up, your shoulder mobility, which again is that band work, or if you have any kind of weights. This is just a 10-pound weight, goes super, super light on things like halos. which if you're standing up, which I am not, so that's okay, is really just coming in a circle around your head. That's something you can do with a water bottle. It's something you can do with a light weight. It's something you can do with a bottle of wine. But it gets your shoulders accustomed to taking weight again, and it gets your shoulders accustomed to moving through their full range of motion, while your core and your lats and your rhomboids are all maintaining their alignment, which are all going to be really, really great things for coming into any of this fight work.
Very cool. What are some things that for you as a fighter, what are some exercises, or what are some things that you've done to help sustain you in your training? Like whether it's sustain you for a show, make sure that you've still got the energy for the show, or in between shows, making sure that you're ready for the next thing. What are some things that you've done
Yeah,
to kind of keep
absolutely.
yourself up?
So part of this, I'm just gonna go ahead and pop my Athletes on Stage Instagram. It's at athletes.on.stage. So put those periods in between. I'll throw that. I will not throw that in the chat because I don't have the ability to do that, but Terry will. Because I do
If you
post.
can, if you want to throw it in the private chat, I'll
Yeah,
copy
there we
paste it.
go.
I'll put it in a banner.
Thank you.
Mm.
Because I do post a lot of kind of one-off videos of things that have worked particularly well for me
Mhm.
in maintaining my fitness as a performer, and in particular in addressing a lot of common injuries that I see both in myself, in my own past, as well as in performers. So things like those crunchy or immobile hips, things like a stiff back. I had a pretty bad back injury my senior year of college from a dance piece I was doing at the time, like to the point where after this happened immediately, I wasn't able to walk for about 4 days
Ooh.
afterwards. And for a couple of years, it would come back every few months until I found powerlifting both to strengthen that back and until I uh, encompassed or put into my daily practice a couple of mobility exercises. So I do go through those on the Athletes on Stage Instagram, as well as I will just post this, give this a shout out as well. I do host open workouts on Saturday mornings. So this Saturday, not next Saturday, because we're doing a stage combat workshop, but this Saturday you can come join us, and that is very much a performer focused workout.
And
But
that's going to be on your Instagram?
that is on the Instagram page. It's going to be a Zoom workout. It's linked on that Instagram page as well as on my website and on my Facebook page. So
Very cool.
you can find it. I promise. I have
Yeah.
not spammed this. But yeah, so as a performer during shows, during really heavy tech weeks, I tend to fall back on a lot of recovery style workouts and mobility style workouts,
Mhm.
particularly when you're in a heavy show period. One of the things that always happens to your body is you develop these imbalances based on whatever movement it is that you're doing, right? If you're in a dance piece, you're in a fight scene, you're probably using one side of your body in a very, very different way than you're using the other side. You're probably lunging forward more than you're necessarily pulling back, or whatever it is, depending on what that piece of choreography looks like.
Right.
So, whenever you're doing that in a really repetitive way, particularly in something like a tech week or a 10 show week or whatever you're doing, you're asking a lot of your body and not necessarily giving it the opposition movement that it needs. So, finding mobility work that works for you very, very well, whether that's something like a rolling shin box to really open up your hips, or spinal waves to lubricate the spine and get a lot of movement in there and a lot of really juicy movement and open up the body in that way, is really a matter of finding what it is that your performance is asking of your body and making
Mhm.
sure you're doing the opposite of that as well, in order to keep yourself in balance and not to not come out of a show with a bunch of injuries that you didn't go into it with.
Right.
Yeah.
Oof.
But yeah, but beyond that, when I'm not in a show, and that's actually what's really exciting right now, like, I don't get me wrong, I miss being in a studio. I miss being in rehearsals. I miss like actually fighting in a room with other people. But what I decided really, really early on in this quarantine was that I was going to treat this like an extended off season. And as performers, we don't really get an off season.
Right.
Right. You're going from project to project, or you're going from a tour to a residency to whatever it is, or you're taking 3 SPT classes at once because you want to like get those weapons under your belt or whatever it is. You're usually really, really busy, and your training outside of the studio and the rehearsal space has to work around your job. It has to work
Mhm.
around the weapon specific training that you're doing, or it has to work around the rehearsal process that you're in, or whatever it is. Because you can't show up to a show and be like, oh man, I had a really heavy leg day yesterday. Like, I don't have it. I can't do the thing. Right? That
Mhm.
doesn't work. So right now we
Funny.
get this kind of gift
Mhm.
of not needing to think about that
Yeah.
tomorrow. You sounded like you had a story about that.
Um, when you said like you can't come in and say, "Oh man, I had a really heavy leg day yesterday. I can't do."
Oh
It
yeah.
reminded me of the first time Ian Rose showed us Zulu lunges. And I don't know if Oliver took you through Zulu lunges
I
or what.
don't think so.
So
Please.
I won't show off what Zulu lunges are because Ian tends to kind of get a little frustrated at me for kind of giving this away a little bit. But long story short, Zulu lunges really work your quads and really work your glutes because you're essentially going into a very deep squat and explosively coming out of that in one of four different directions. You can go forward, backwards, side to side, whatever. So the very first time I was introduced to Zulu lunges, um, I was also the stage management intern at a local theater company up in just north of Philly called People's Night and Theater Company.
Mhm.
And I was that season the assistant stage manager for their production of A Tale of Two Cities. And it was a 2-story set.
Oh no.
And it just happened to be during Tech Week, one of the big parts of Tech Week.
Mhm.
And so part of my responsibility during the show, during a run, was to carry this rather kind of convoluted and kind of heavy set piece or prop up to the second level of the stairs because the second levels had these big screens that they used to kind of shadow cast from behind. So I was
Mhm.
supposed to carry what looked like a bed up to the second floor and put it behind the screen and get out of there real quick so that when the light came on, it looked like a new scene was a new set was behind there.
And your quads are just fried. And oh
For at
no.
least a week, my quads, my glutes, my hamstrings did like going down the stairs was worse.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like, yeah.
Kind of half
So
stumbling, half falling down. You're like, this is fine. This.
it's like
Nope.
leaning on the stair rails to kind of like take off some of the pressure. Yeah. So even not even just from the on stage side
Mhm.
of things, stage crew, you better be on your game as well. Cause like for any performers, you probably know, and if you don't, you should start to pay attention and give a lot of credit to stage crew does a hell of a lot. And they need stage crew. You better also be paying attention to what Tori's saying as well, because what conditions for performers can also condition crew. We're all kind of, this is why theater is a family. We're all in this together, creating this crazy thing called theater. So anything we can do to make sure it stays words are a thing. I'm gonna end there.
Yeah, but I mean, whether you're carrying a massive prop up a bunch of like rickety set stairs up the back way, or you're partnering and you're like, yep, I need to catch this woman and like lift her above my head. So like, I can't do a heavy overhead press day the day before because like that has to be there. I have to be there for my partner, whether that's someone I'm physically partnering or a fight partner or whatever it is, right? Your
Mhm.
training has to work around your performance schedule
Yep.
and your rehearsal schedule. And that's something that you don't have to deal with right now, which is really frustrating. And I would rather be dealing with it, but it's also really exciting because you get to work on explosiveness or really athletic movements, or movements just that like absolutely fry you, if you want to, if that's something that sounds exciting to you and you want to add more athleticism to the way that you move as a performer, if you want to come back in and like have your kicks so much higher and have your jump so much higher and be able to show more power behind a punch, this is the best possible time for you to physically work towards those goals, or to
Yeah.
whatever goal it is, right? Whether that's that you want to put on a little bit more muscle to be a little bit stronger when you come back into a rehearsal room, or whether that's that you want to get to work in a form that you wouldn't otherwise get to work in, like we have, or with teachers you wouldn't otherwise get to work it with, right? Like Kevin McCurdy calling in from the UK, or Brandy Laird over from the West Coast with that like really cool parkour inspired instruction that maybe there isn't time for you to do around your rehearsal schedule and your performance schedule.
Yeah.
You have this opportunity to do that now, and that's really cool and really sad, but really cool.
Yeah, yeah, it's a weird kind of double-edged sword.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, agreed.
A double-edged
So
sword, Tober. I'm so sorry. I apologize.
do not be sorry. This is freaking awesome and I want it to catch on, people. Let's make this happen. Hey, like we got to use it somewhere, right? Exactly.
Yep.
So it's either that or the typical, which
Also
both
great.
should be catching on. We need
Use
to
them
make
both.
exactly use them both. So we've been talking a lot about athletes on stage, and for anybody who might just be joining us, Athletes on Stage is Torre's physical training company specifically for performers. What makes that kind of training, what makes that different than just the typical physical training regimens that we see? Because there's so many out there.
Yeah, there absolutely
Yeah.
are. And so Athletes on Stage is something that launched, it's the 21st, 11 days ago. I qualified for my ACE, so American College of Exercise personal training certification, a few weeks ago. It's something I've been working towards for about a year, but Athletes on Stage is something that I wanted to start for quite a while, because heavy lifting did so much for me as a performer, both in how I'm able to pick up new movements or new movement disciplines because I am just learning a skill as opposed to trying to learn how to move my body, or trying to find the strength to do something, or trying to develop the conditioning to stick with a class for the entire duration of it. Being in better shape and being a stronger person physically makes me a better performer. And I know that. And I noticed how different my movement was once I started adding that into my life. It also, frankly, mentally did a lot for me, particularly everybody in the arts has experienced this at some point. I feel really confident saying that. But in particular, there are a couple of studies that show that the rate of eating disorders in dancers is about 3 times higher than in the general population. And one of the things that powerlifting specifically, but it's not just that, it's any kind of heavy strength training, can do for you is allow you to suddenly be moving this weight that's external to yourself, and you're suddenly looking at goals that have nothing to do with what your body looks like in a mirror, or what a director thinks your lines look like, or what your physical shape should look like, but rather you're getting to sling around some heavy iron, and that is awesome, right? Like there's something different about that than all the other ways that we move as performers and all the other physical training systems that we have as performers. So that's what really made me want to start this. And in starting to lift really heavy, and I was actually a competitive power lifter for a while, which is an entirely different story, um, particularly as to why I left that world. But one of the things that I would run up against is that, I was training with these coaches who were doing small group training in Minneapolis, and it's like they're fantastic and they're brilliant and they know the human body so well and movement so well. But you would be in the middle of this training regime, you'd be like, okay, but I have a really heavy rehearsal schedule right now, or like I'm going into tech week, I can't also try to max out my lifts that week because that's not possible for my body to do. Or, we would be looking at a certain way of training and okay, cool. But as a performer or like as a dancer, I'm already really, really strong in these types of ways. My weaknesses are actually over here compared to the general population. So, what Athletes on Stage does is it looks at you in particular and your goals as a performer, whether that's as a dancer or an acrobat or an actor combatant or an aerialist or whatever it is, and where the weaknesses are in your body or where the imbalances are in your body, most of which are coming from what type of training you've been in. And part of the fun about getting to do that is that right, I have experience with pretty much every variety of physical theater or like movement based art form. So if you come into me and you tell me like, "Oh, I primarily train in like contemporary dance with a really strong Horton technique base." I know what that means. I know that that means that you're doing a lot of back extensions and you're probably hyperextending your back to be on stage and to hit a certain line. Or, if you come in and tell me that you have a lot, that you're an acrobatic base, right? Like I know that that means that you necessarily have a lot of really strong upper body movements in your day-to-day performance life and rehearsal life. I know that that means that you have to have a lot of explosiveness and a lot of stability, and that you probably want to keep a lot of mass to be able to hold your flyer up or whatever that is. You get to come into Athletes on Stage and talk about what you want out of your performance life, and we get to figure out how to get you there, which is awesome, right? Because there's a lot of stuff that makes you a better performer. And a lot of it is really similar to what makes you a better mover in general. So a lot of it is or can be really similar to other personal training systems that exist or other workout systems that exist that you can buy, a 9.99 program for off of Instagram or follow along a video on YouTube. And like I do firmly believe that any kind of movement that you can add into your life is probably going to be beneficial if you're doing it with good form, and particularly for people who have a lot of movement experience. Right, we know when something doesn't feel quite right, so we're not at the same risk as the general population to end up doing something from someone just like some fitness influencer who has no actual credentials or movement or workout exercise science experience, of which there are quite a number, and end up injured or with imbalances in the same way that the general population is. But at the same time, it's a much higher risk if we do that, right? If you end up doing, I'm not going to name any particular YouTuber, Instagram fitness influencer names, but following X, Y, or Z program from somebody who has absolutely no credentials and no real programming experience and no real kinesiology or exercise science experience, and then you injure yourself because it's really imbalanced or it's doing a lot of high impact work on top of a high impact rehearsal schedule on your apartment floor that probably isn't really well designed for that kind of thing, then you're at the risk of destroying or fundamentally changing your physical instrument. And that's a really, really high risk and not one that I want to see people take, or not something that I want to see performers experience, to injure themselves in that way. So, Athletes on Stage is different because it is industry specific and it is performer centric. It looks at what you need to be a better performer, whether that is you need better core strength because your balance is not quite there, or you need balance specific training because maybe your core is really, really strong, but it's not something you've had to do a lot of, and suddenly you find yourself coming from like a theater background and now wanting to get into a lot of stage combat where you do want to be able to hit a position very, very well, or you need more explosiveness in your movement to jump higher or start a movement faster or recover from a lunge faster, right? That's all explosiveness. So there's something in particular we can train for that in a way that will still be really, really body friendly, because a lot of explosiveness training tends to go into the plyometric world, which is cool and great, but particularly if you're a dancer, if you're an actor combatant or an acrobat or an aerialist, and you're doing a lot of high impact stuff anyway, you're doing a lot of gymnastics, you're doing a lot of rehearsals on maybe not the nicest floors because we're in a city and we rehearse where we can, your joints are already getting a lot of impact on them and you want to protect them. So there are ways that we can do explosiveness training without putting even more pressure onto our joints, which isn't usually a concern for somebody who's trying to train explosiveness just in a gym setting, because that's probably the majority of the movement that they're getting in their day is in that workout session. So we can be really, really intelligent about the way that we program to preserve your body so that the thing that you do, that you love to do, that you make your money off of, or that is your central hobby or whatever it is your primary physical goal, right? We will work your training around all of that to protect your body, for it to get you in better shape, for it to get you more balanced, for it to fix the imbalances that it necessarily creates, because any kind of specific activity is always going to create an imbalance in your body, because it's always going to ask you to do one specific type of thing.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. I'm actually like, maybe I should be talking to.
Come join us on Saturday.
We'll talk. We'll
Yeah,
talk.
right. Perfect.
Yeah,
Would love to.
exactly. Cool. Are you up to, other than getting this amazing program off the ground in like, what'd you say, 11 days ago?
11 days ago. It went live 11 days ago.
Talk about a newborn. Are you up to anything else during these crazy times? Are you working on any other kind of crazy projects? Or, because I always see you doing something, either on Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is. Like you see, excuse me, you seem to be really busy, and I love it.
Yeah, so I have been, honestly, this has been the majority of it, right? Like getting athletes on stage up and running, getting it ready to go, and working really, really hard on those training programs and on what like my ideal version of a training program would be. Like if somebody had handed it to me like 3 years ago and was like, no, don't worry about any of that, like here you go. That's been a lot of it, but I've also been doing a lot of, just movement and dance improv in my apartment. I have this cute little like patio space that I've been getting some like dance film work done in. And then I actually just this past Sunday was on set on a socially distanced masked up set at the Butterfly Pavilion and Insectarium in Philadelphia,
Ooh.
doing some filming for a project with Cirque du Nuit, which I just dropped the link to their website in the chat. They are coming up with a project called Thicket. And Thicket is a virtual immersive experience. So it's a combination of like video game, live stream, MMORPG, world exploration, immersive work. And that technically goes live on November 1st, is their beta test. And then a couple of weeks after that, it goes fully live. So that was really exciting. And I love all of that and all of the other just immersive virtual projects that are coming out of quarantine. Because I love me some weirdo film work or like virtual space work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was this sort of moment of panic when we first got into quarantine and everyone was creating virtual or video-based work just to do something.
Right.
And I think we've all gotten a chance to like breathe a little bit and come back and go, okay, well, what can we actually do really, really well in
Yeah.
this space? And I think Thicket and I think what Cirque du Nuit's doing is a really fun example of that. So
Yeah.
y'all should all go check that out.
So I'll put the link up one more time. Yeah, this is the link that Tori was talking about, that the projects she was working on. So definitely check that. I'm gonna make sure I write that down and check it out as well. That sounds really freaking awesome. Yeah, I agree. There, like, since quarantine started, there have been a lot of really interesting projects. For a little while there, we saw a bunch of like the stunt community did the fight chains, and that kind of caught on across various communities. And for those who don't know, for the Philadelphia Stage Combat Workshop, we are also trying to do one of those. Since we can't do our typical annual melee in person this year, we figured, what is the virtual equivalent of our melee? Well, it seems to be these fight videos. So for everybody who registers as a student here, if you register as a student, you can get a chance to participate in our massive student virtual fight chain melee. And it's going to be put together and edited by J. Alex Cadero. Hopefully we're going to be talking to him on one of these live streams in the next couple of days. And it's going to be an awesome opportunity. Yeah, there have been a lot of interesting projects. The one project that just popped into my mind, and this doesn't, it sort of has stage combat community vibes to it, because it's something that we all love. The Hollywood home movie version of Princess Bride that was going around.
I missed this.
Yes.
What? Tell me so much more.
Well, it was specifically on this streaming service called Quibi. It was like only every episode of something was only 10 minutes long. And I was like, okay, I don't know if I want to pay anything. So I did like the month free trial kind of thing. And it was right at the time when this program, I can't quite remember what the name of the program is. This filmmaker who was part of Hollywood put the call out to various A-listers, and they did essentially a home movie version of The Princess Bride. They sent out like anyone who wanted to participate. They split up all of the different scenes across the entire movie to all of these different A-listers. There must have been at least like 10 to 15 different people who at various points of time played either Wesley or Buttercup. They even had somebody playing Ben Savage's character, the kid, and the grandpa. Adam Sandler was the grandpa at one point, and it was all just like the celebrities shooting their POV, their perspective in their house, and the filmmaker edited it together with POVs from the other people's houses.
Yeah.
And they used whatever props they could at home. Like at one point there was Hugh Jackman was Humperdinck up in a tower during one of those, like, I present to you Princess Buttercup, that one of those scenes. And he's got this like bowl on his head to signify the crown. And I don't quite remember who was playing Buttercup in that scene, but it cuts to this woman coming out of her front door in what looks like a kind of frilly bathrobe kind of thing, and like a makeshift crown and veil. And for the townsfolk, it was all sorts of stuffed animals. And any of like the big scenes where like it's supposed to be like crowd scenes, that kind of thing, the filmmaker just spliced in shots with their Legos. It literally was like the classic home movie kind of version, and it works so well. Like at one point, when Wesley and Buttercup are running along the one hill, and it's just before she pushes him down the hill, and he's like, "As you wish," as he's rolling. It was I can't remember who the two people were, but all I remember is the person playing Buttercup mimes pushing their partner down the stairs, and it cuts just before the person actually falls, but it cuts to them they dressed a pillow up in the costume and threw it down the stairs.
Yeah, of course they did.
And of course they had to do it like, and she's like, oh my dear Wesley. And she goes like she's about to jump down the stairs, and the next thing you know, it's a pillow dressed as her being thrown down the stairs with the sound effect of ah!
That's beautiful. That is perfect.
The ingenuity that has had to come out during quarantine is freaking unbelievable. And with the fight community as well. Like, I know Lubke has been doing, with his company, has been doing a lot of at-home training tips, like how to build your own kind of practice weapons if you don't have one, and various other ideas in that way. I know various teachers have been talking about different kind of practice dummies that they built in their garages. So yeah, the stage combat community and the stunt community is definitely getting creative, to say the least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that that Lubke was saying around that at-home training is, at this point, like, virtual training is always going to be an accompaniment to your main training, right? This isn't a replacement for your primary training. So you get to have fun with it, or go off and explore something that you don't have time to explore during normal times, or dive deep into a particular style, or reading a particular weapons history, or whatever it is that you might not have time to do. If that's diving really, really deep into like what Hema or Hama is doing, if that's diving really deep into like parkour training, if that's diving really deep into that, like building that physical base and doing something else there, if that's diving really deep into taking like virtual clown classes to work on that specificity and that intention, like this gets to be your subsidiary training time.
Yeah, agreed.
That's super cool.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Like I cannot wait to see what other training opportunities come up. So for the time being, we have this training opportunity that we are talking about. This one right here. You go to the website, you can actually see all of the classes that we're listing. If you are not Eastern Seaboard or part of the Eastern Standard Time, we do have you can download the full schedule, and it does have a breakdown of what times all of our different periods happen in your time zone. So if you're curious about is this going to work for me? West Coast folks, I'm really sorry. Our first class for you essentially equates to 7:30 in the morning for you. I'm really sorry.
Wake up with some movement. It's great. It's a great day.
Because on the opposite end of that, we also have a lot of those early morning classes, like the first period of classes, include Kev McCurdy, who is 5 hours ahead of us. So we're spanning the globe a bit. So there's going to be a bit of balance that's going to need to be. And I can officially kind of say this: we are 99.9% there with the teachers. I didn't want to announce this until we got official confirmation that all of the teachers gave consent for this. We are going to be recording all of the classes. There's like one holdout that I still have to hear back from, but we've pretty much gotten approval from all of the teachers to record these classes. So what that means is that the classes will be available for a short period of time after the workshop is done. So if there are certain classes that you wanted to sign up for, but they were at the exact same time as this other class that you really liked, which is the typical workshop conundrum.
Turns out you can be in two places at once now.
Exactly.
You're welcome to the internet.
Exactly. You have that opportunity. We're still kind of working out on, is access to other classes that you didn't originally sign up for, is that going to be an extra cost? Is that part of the tuition itself? We're still kind of figuring that out, but we want to make sure that you know, even if you aren't able to attend with us on the weekend itself, you can still register as a student and get access to those classes after the fact. So you can register as a student, even if you don't tune in on that Saturday or Sunday. come that like Monday or Tuesday or the next weekend when you do have time available, you can jump on the website or jump on the access that we'll be providing everybody and be able to tune in and catch up with the classes that you missed. So lots of chances for flexibility. And that's kind of what this time really needs to be about. We need to be really flexible and understanding with what everyone's doing, because we are all trying to balance so much right now. So, all right, I think that is pretty much it for tonight. I also want to give a humongous shout out to Tori here. Tori has been on our first real staff, like heavy duty staff this year. Jeff and Steve, if you've attended the workshop in years past, they've primarily been our main consistent staff folks each year. This year, we extended that staff bubble a bit to incorporate a lot more folks, because we are getting kind of big. We're getting to a point where we needed a little extra help being able to manage a bunch of things. So
what a fantastic problem.
Exactly. It's such a good problem to have. But I knew, especially with my brain would have exploded. So Tori over here has been an amazing help with making sure things are moving smoothly. Tori is also our student liaison this year. So if you register as a student, chances are you are going to be hearing from Tori in the next couple of days. We're working on making sure everyone's got their waivers filled out, everyone's got their student registrations filled out. So one way or another, you're going to be hearing from Tori. So, all righty. Once again, Tori, thank you so much for jumping on, chatting with us. I'm definitely going to be checking out some actors on stage, or athletes on stage. So can't wait to see it. One more time, here's our website to register as a student. If you tuned in late and you weren't able to ask us any questions on live, shoot us some questions here. Don't forget the crazy hashtags that we're trying to do. And otherwise, I think that is pretty much it. Thank you so much, Tori.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your evening.
Have a great rest of your evening, everybody. Have a good night.